Hello friends, today's topic is addressing the audience. Addressing an audience is a unique art. It needs a lot of practice and commitment to master this art. There are certain speakers who catch your attention instantly and you feel like listening to them for hours. And yet, there are many others who do not appeal to you at all. We know from our everyday knowledge that we have to vary our vocabulary, sentence structure, and tone to suit the person who is listening. We do not use the same linguistic range when addressing children as we do with the adults. Cicero, one of the great philosophers of the world, who lived in the 1st century BC, wrote that all good public speaking was characterized by nervousness. Benjamin Disraeli, known in England in 1800s for his dramatic political views, once said that he would rather lead a cavalry charge than face the House of Commons for the first time. William Jennings Bryan, one of the great American orators of the 20th century, admitted that in his first attempt, his knees fairly smote together. In one of the surveys conducted by the People's Almanac Book of Lists, the question, "What are you most afraid of?" was asked to 3,000 Americans. Now look at the results of this survey. Now, as you can see, the results clearly shows that addressing an audience quite effectively is not everybody's cup of tea. There are a number of factors that contribute to the making of a great speaker. Selection of strong and appropriate words is one of the most important elements of addressing an audience. Effective messages depend on carefully chosen words. First, pay close attention to correctness. If you make grammatical or usage errors, you lose credibility with your audience, even if your message is otherwise correct. Poor grammar implies that you don't respect your audience enough to get things right. If you have doubts about what is correct, look up the answer and use the proper form of expression. The right words can dramatically affect the success of your communication efforts. Notice the use of strong and appropriate words in this video.
Oh my goodness! I'm at Harvard! Wow! To President Faust, my fellow honorands, Carl, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much. And James Rothenberg, Stephanie Wilson, Harvard faculty, with a special bow to my friend, Dr. Henry Louis Gates. All of you alumni, with a special bow to the class of '88 and your $115 million. And to you, members of the Harvard class of 2013, hello. I thank you for allowing me to be a part of the conclusion of this chapter of your lives and the commencement of your next chapter. To say that I'm honored doesn't even begin to quantify the depth of gratitude that really accompanies an honorary doctorate from Harvard. Not too many little girls from rural Mississippi have made it all the way here to Cambridge, and I can tell you that I consider today, as I sat on the stage this morning getting teary for you all and then teary for myself, I consider today a defining milestone in a very long and a blessed journey. My one hope today is that I can be a source of some inspiration. I'm going to address my remarks to anybody who is ever felt inferior or felt disadvantaged, felt screwed by life, this is a speech for the quad. Actually, I was so honored. I wanted to do something really special for you. I wanted to be able to have you look under your seats and there would be free master and doctor degrees. But I see you got that covered already. I will be honest with you. I felt a lot of pressure over the past few weeks to come up with something that I could share with you that you hadn't heard before, because after all, y'all went to Harvard, I did not. But then I realized that you don't have to necessarily go to Harvard to have a driven, obsessive, type A personality, but it helps. And while I may not have graduated from here, I admit that my personality is about as Harvard as they come. You know, my television career began unexpectedly. As you heard this morning, I was in the Miss Fire Prevention contest. That was when I was 16 years old in Nashville, Tennessee, and you had the requirement of having to have red hair in order to win up until the year that I entered. So they were doing the question and answer period, because I knew I wasn't going to win in the swimsuit competition. So during the question and answer period, the question came, "Why, young lady, what would you like to be when you grow up?" And by the time they got to me, all the good answers were gone. So I had seen Barbara Walters on the Today Show that morning, so I answered, "I would like to be a journalist. I would like to tell other people's stories in a way that makes a difference in their lives and the world." And as those words were coming out of my mouth, I went, "Whoa, this is pretty good. I would like to be a journalist. I want to make a difference." Well, I was on television by the time I was 19 years old. And in 1986, I launched my own television show with a relentless determination to succeed. At first, I was nervous about the competition, and then I became my own competition, raising the bar every year, pushing myself as hard as I knew. Sound familiar to anybody here? Eventually, we did make it to the top, and we stayed there for 25 years.
Now we'll talk about verbal signals. An indication of what will be coming later in your talk is an effective method of maintaining audience interest. Use transitions to draw your audience a roadmap of your talk. For example, in a few moments, I will provide some relevant examples that will interest you. I will now provide some evidence to support my last statement. Now we come to bias-free language. Bias-free language avoids words and phrases that unfairly and even unethically categorize or stigmatize people in ways related to gender, race, authenticity, age, or disability. To a significant degree, language reflects the way people think and what they believe. Moreover, since communication is all about perception, being fair and objective isn't enough. To establish a good relationship with your audience, you must also appear to be fair. An example that comes within the experience of the audience can create empathy and break the ice. For example, if you are addressing a group of communication students, it would probably be useless to explain something by comparing it to a complicated scientific process. A comparison with activities of the news media would be more enlightening. Now we'll talk about an interesting element of addressing an audience, that is humor. To use humor in your presentations, you don't need to be a stand-up comedian. What you need to do is make a connection with the audience. Do it by promoting an atmosphere of amusement and openness. Sprinkle some levity in your title, opening story, and closing, or surprise the audience with unusual connections. Now, look at Lance Miller's way of addressing the audience. His topic is the ultimate question. Miller won Toastmasters International World Championship of Public Speaking in the year 2005. Here he uses examples and anecdotes quite effectively.
The ultimate question. That question that has plagued man since the dawn of time. And that question that each and every one of us must ask at some point in our life. Do you validate? Mr. Chairman, fellow Toastmasters and friends, I was 26 years old. I was living in a small town in Indiana. I had a job I didn't like. I hadn't had a date in 3 years. And I had a couple of roommates named Mom and Dad. I felt like my life was going nowhere. So I took control. I left my home and my family, and I headed to Los Angeles to start over. 6 months later, I had a job I didn't like. I was dating a girl who was trying to make me better by pointing out all of my faults. And I had a couple of roommates that made Dumb and Dumber look like Einstein and Oppenheimer. I had changed everything in my life, but nothing had changed. I still felt like I was going nowhere. And then one day after a business meeting, all I wanted to do was get my parking validated. And I walked over to the receptionist and said, "Excuse me, do you validate?" And she looked up and said, "Well, yes, I do. You have a lovely smile." Showing her the ticket, I said, "No, I was just in a meeting with your boss. Do you validate?" And she said, "Well, let me compliment you on what a fine choice of business associates you have." Catching on, I said, "You have such a keen sense of humor. I'm going to go tell your boss how lucky he is to have you out here." And she goes, "Give me that ticket." She took her little machine and she went, cha-chink. And then as she handed it back, she looked at me and she said, "There's something special about you." I took the ticket and headed for the elevator. But I stopped. I turned around and just said, "Thank you." I don't know how long it had been since I'd felt validated. Her words stayed with me all the way home. And as I was looking at my life, I started to wonder how long it had been since I'd validated somebody else. I wanted to do that. I wanted to make people feel good. But I felt that I needed to be important. I needed to be successful, so that when I said something to somebody, it meant something to them. But that receptionist had just made my day. Heck, she made my month. With one little cha-chink, she stamped my ticket. And I thought, I can do that. So I went home to see Dumb and Dumber. These guys were constantly bringing people back to the apartment. It was driving me nuts. But I went in and I said, "You make friends faster than anybody I've ever seen. And that is a gift." To see their faces, I swear they got smarter right before my eyes. Cha-chink. I went to see my girlfriend, and I thanked her for caring enough about me that she wanted to see me be as good as I could be. You know what? She got nicer. Cha-chink. I went to work, and I thanked my boss for hiring me. He'd done me a favor, and I started to enjoy my work a lot more. Cha-chink. I used to think I had to be important before I could validate other people. I used to look at people as obstacles to my success. But what I discovered was I became important when I validated other people. I became important to that person and that person. People were the pathway to my success. I started trying to find something I could stamp on everybody I met. That little piece of goodness, that little piece of rightness, just a little cha-chink. I started to feel like a superhero. Underneath this mild-mannered exterior was a blue and red spandex suit with a giant V on the chest. Yes, I was the validator. When things would get tense, they'd tighten up, I'd come in and cha-chink, cha-chink, cha-chink. I had plenty of ink. I'd hear people say, "Who was that man?" "I don't know, but I heard this cha-chink and suddenly I feel so much better now." And then I figured it out. You know what's wrong with the world? You know what's wrong with me? Do you know what's wrong with you? Who cares? The question is, what is right with the world? What is right with me? What is right with you? The common denominator of all humanity is the fact that we are human. We are by nature imperfect. It takes no special talent to find an imperfection in another person. But every person goes through life wanting to be right, wanting to be valuable. Find that. Bring it out in them. I started to discover in my life that I got what I validated. I found out that I brought out the goodness, the value in others by validating that. We have a lot of problems in this world, but I've learned that there is not a problem that exists between a parent and a child, between a husband and a wife, between a worker and his employer, or between races, cultures, or nations that does not stem directly from an inability or an unwillingness to validate the rightness, the value, and the goodness in another. This is the ultimate question. Do you validate? But this is not what's important. What's important is, can you cha? Can you cha? Can you cha? You've been a great audience.
After watching this wonderful video, let us talk about credibility. Your audience response to every message you send depends heavily on their perception of your credibility. A measure of your believability based on how reliable you are and how much trust you evoke in others. Whether you are working to build credibility with a new audience, to maintain credibility with an existing audience, or to restore credibility after a mistake, emphasize the following points. First comes honesty. Demonstrating honesty and integrity will earn you the respect of your audiences, even if they don't always agree with or welcome your messages. Objectivity. Show that you can distance yourself from emotional situations and look at all sides of an issue. Awareness of audience needs. Let your audience know that you understand what's important to them. Credentials, knowledge, and expertise. Audiences need to know that you have whatever it takes to back up your message. Whether it's education, professional certification, special training, past successes, or simply the fact that you have done your research properly. Now let us talk about endorsements. If your audience doesn't know anything about you, try to get assistance from someone they do know and trust. Performance. Demonstrating impressive communication skills is not enough. People need to know that they can count on you to get the job done. Confidence. Audiences also need to know that you believe in yourself and your message. If you're convinced that your message is sound, you can state your case confidently. without sounding boastful or arrogant. Now let us talk about communication style. Support your points with evidence, not empty terms such as amazing, incredible, or extraordinary. Sincerity. When you offer praise, don't use hyperbole, such as, "You are the most fantastic employee I could ever imagine." Instead, point out specific qualities that warrant praise. Now we come to audience involvement. Asking questions to your audience throughout your talk helps to maintain interest. It also develops a relationship between you and the audience. Asking questions also means that your words are not merely being aimed at the audience. You are actually inviting them to participate and drawing them into a mutual thinking process. For example, has anyone considered the large number of people who are permanently affected by the road accidents? Who can suggest some alternative uses for plastic bubble wraps? Someone's home is broken into every 7 minutes. Can you believe that? Make eye contact with your audience to establish a bond. This involves glancing at the faces or the members of the audience. Don't be afraid to look people in the eye, but don't stare continuously. A few seconds is enough. Eye contact not only establishes a bond, but also registers your progress. You can gauge audience reaction to what is being said by looking at the faces of the audience. Faces can indicate interest, puzzlement, boredom, and pleasure. In other words, the faces of the audience are your barometer. Now let us talk about body language. Body language can provide clues to help you understand other people, but it's also a powerful tool for boosting your ability to influence audiences when you speak. Always try to keep your hands free. Your hands will probably creep together without you noticing. When that happens, immediately separate them again. To enlarge your body language, move your feet. The larger body movement will free up your body and will encourage you to make larger gestures. Now let us talk about voice inflection. Voice inflection can be defined as the change in the form of a word to express a grammatical function or attribute such as tense, mood, person, etc. It is the change in the way the word is used to produce a desired mood. Voice inflection has the following key elements. Pace. Speaking to an audience requires a slower pace than informal conversation. Pace can be varied. Slow measured speech for a point which is serious or needs emphasizing. Fast speaking to lend excitement or urgency to other points. However, the pace should not be so slow that the audience becomes impatient to hear the next word. Now we come to pitch. Variations in pitch can be useful. For example, the pitch could be raised to add emphasis to a question. Variation needs to be employed with caution, as too frequent use of high pitch can be irritable to the audience. Now tone. Tone is the quality which expresses feeling. It can lend warmth and sincerity to your voice or reveal how strongly you feel about a topic. This can evoke a similar response from the audience. Now it's time to talk about volume. High volume or loudness is not the same thing as shouting. The voice should only be loud enough for those listeners in the back rows to hear comfortably. You can vary volume to make the seminar more lively and interesting. Now we come to pausing. Pausing can focus attention on what has been said or what is about to be said, or to prepare the audience for a change in ideas. Now you listen to Connor Neal. He is a well-known voice trainer and speaker. In this video, he explains the 5 aspects of powerful voice.
The first, breathing. Fill your lungs up with air. Take a breath that will allow you to count to 20 and shout out 18, 19, and 20. So really fill your lungs with air. That breathing moves up your diaphragm and turns this part of your chest into a powerful amplifier of your voice, much like a guitar or a violin. The second thing, resonance. Get the vibration on your sternum, here. You need to feel the vibration of the vowels. Me, my, mo, ma, vibrating here, not up in the nose. The weakest voice is a voice that's coming through the nose. So if you're breathing to raise up the diaphragm and you're getting resonance here, you're starting to blow out big bass tones that powerfully transmit your voice. The third thing of a powerful voice is silence, is variety. Silence. The fourth aspect of a powerful voice, now that we're breathing, we've got resonance, we're using silence. The fourth aspect, articulation. Start and finish each word. Pronounce every syllable, no mumbling, and remove the relleno. Remove like, es que, no. Remove those words and articulate each sound in each word. Articulation. No, we're breathing, we've got resonance, we're using silence, and we're articulating powerfully each sound in the word. The fifth thing is where we can really nail home a speech or lose it completely. And it's a dangerous thing because nerves often ruin this. Now, this is an aspect of voice that works in all human languages, from Japan to the Eskimos, from Brazil to Africa. All human languages have a way of showing certainty and a way of showing doubt. And it's downward inflection at the end of a sentence transmits certainty. Upward inflection at the end of a sentence transmits doubt or question. CEC is the best business school in the world? Question. CEC is the best business school in the world? Certainty. So downward inflection at the end of your message, of your most powerful sentence, transmits that you've done the work, transmits power in the voice. These are the 5 aspects of a powerful human voice.
Now we come to the conclusion of this lecture. To summarize, we could say that in one or the other way, everybody is a public speaker. Maybe you are delivering a corporate presentation or interviewing for a new job. Maybe you are a teacher lecturing your students, or a citizen addressing a neighborhood association. Maybe you are arguing a case before a courtroom or persuading book club members about the merits of the latest book you have read. Whatever the situation may be, being able to speak in public is essential to success. You can have the most logical argument possible, but in order to truly teach, inform, persuade, or defend, you need to present your ideas with conviction. All it takes is confidence, practice, and the knowledge of time-tested techniques and strategies. With this, I come to the end of this lecture. See you very soon. Thank you very much.